There's a very strange case of an asylum seeker from Afghanistan who committed and was found guilty of 3 charges in October of this year. And one of them was the RAPE of a teenager. The other 2 were for threatening behaviour on separate occasions between March the 1st and April the 30th, with the worst crime taking place on the 4th of August. Now, what I find very strange about this, there's a couple of things I find a bit weird. During the court proceedings, it was disclosed that on the first 2 counts where he was found guilty, he was actually housed in an asylum hotel in Elgin, up in the very north of Scotland. Now, if you are in an asylum hotel, that would suggest that your asylum process was going through and your application was being considered. And he carried out 2 crimes, later found guilty of, and his asylum claim was later accepted. And we know that because during the case, it was disclosed that at the time of the worst case, in the 4th of August, he'd moved on from the hotel and was living in the community. So this man was granted asylum when he had already been not found guilty, but had already carried out the 2 illegal acts of threatening behaviour in a household in Dufftown in Moray. Now, there's another peculiar thing about this case. During the case, the hearing, which was in October, and he was found guilty, the court was told that he would be back in court to hear his sentencing in November 2025. Now, I've searched everywhere on the internet. I've searched everything that I possibly can, and I cannot find one mention of this man being found guilty, being sentenced anywhere. We even looked into court papers, etc. And there is nothing at all anywhere that tells you what he was sentenced to. And I find this most peculiar. Now, I'm not saying that people are hiding information. It could be that the case has just been put off for whatever, maybe background reports or stuff. But the fact that there's no mention of it whatsoever, I find most peculiar. And the other thing that I find peculiar is the timing of the whole thing, because there was recently, last week, there was a protest in Elgin, protesting about housing, unvetted male asylum seekers in the village, in the town. And obviously, there was the usual suspects countering that when they want to call people who have concerns, and justifiable concerns, about the safety of young women in their community. They became targets for anti-fascist, anti-racist self-claimed people who claimed that these people doing these protests and having these concerns were racist and fascist. It's the spin and repeat that we see all over the country. Now, I don't know if this news of the sentence was possibly held back because there was a protest taking place around about the same time, because the only person, I can find one instance where there's a suggestion that he was due to be sentenced on the 27th of November, which would have been days before the protest. And I don't know if there's any connection between those 2 things. I can only tell you those 2 things are factual. The only date I could find was the 27th, and the protest took place a couple of days after it. But isn't it weird that this case has not had any sentencing? And it's got me wondering now, how much information are we hearing when the accused fits a narrative for the media and for the establishment, and they really don't want the information getting out? And it's got me questioning the real scale of this problem. I mean, you consider the size of Elgin and the amount of asylum seekers that are housed there, and we use that to factor in bigger towns and cities with bigger influxes of these men. You get maybe some idea of the potential level of the problem. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to go to one of the local newspapers at the time of the verdict, which was the 30th of October, because they give quite a good report on the crime and what happened. And they also tell you and confirm what I'm saying to you about this date that was set by the court for sentencing. So I'm using the Northern Star here, and their headline is Asylum Seeker Guilty of Brutally Raping Teenager in Cooper Park in Elgin. An asylum seeker has been found guilty of raping a vulnerable teenager in a brutal attack in a Moree Park. Afghan national Rafaela Ahmadzi, also known as Rafaela Ahmadzaya, was walking the streets of Elgin in the early hours of August the 4th, 2024, before approaching the then 17-year-old victim on a bench in Cooper Park. A trial in Edinburgh High Court saw the 21-year-old, now there's some mental claims that he's made during this trial, which kind of are probably the norm as well. The 21-year-old unanimously found guilty of raping the teenager. The court heard that the victim was struggling with her mental health at the time and was out for a walk to listen to music. She later told the police that Ahmadzi, who was staying in the Elgin Hotel before being rehoused, approached her and asked if she had a boyfriend. When she replied she did not, the victim added, "He told me that he was now my boyfriend." He pulled her off the bench and walked towards a play park with one arm around her waist and hand touching her right breast. He said, I kept thinking I need to get away. I tried to pull away from him 3 times. When I did this, the man pulled me towards him. The teenager said she was scared he would become angry if she continued to try and get away. The attacker then pushed the girl to the ground and molested her before walking her to a nearby bush and forcing her to the ground again. She said, I ended up on my back. When he did this, the man was in front of me and leaning over me. The girl was then subjected to RAPE and oral RAPE, despite cries of no. The man completely ignored me when I was saying this, said the teenager. The ordeal came to an end when the victim saw another man walking in the park. She said she needed to go and raised her voice to get attention of the other man and ask for help. That man, a 28-year-old John Donald, he told the court that the victim's hands and arms were shaking as she approached him and he felt a sense of scaredness. He said the size difference between the male and the female was noticeable. She was physically shaking and immediately asked for help. She was crying by this time. She was really struggling to catch her breath. It was like she was hyperventilating. She told me she needed help and asked me to walk her somewhere. The victim went to Dr. Gray's Hospital in Elgin, where she spoke to staff and police were alerted. Ahmadzi denied raping the teenager and claimed that the sex was consensual. Now that's one sort of strange thing, right? But he does another weird thing further on in this story, which I believe that there's a reason for it. The victim was happy and instigated what occurred. So this man stood in court, claimed that that young girl, instigated this and was happy. He told the court through an interpreter when we went, now this is bizarre, and this is something I seen from my own eyes in court a couple of weeks ago, and I'll probably do a video on it alone. This man was able to converse with his victim. But when he goes to court, he needs an interpreter. He told the court through the interpreter, when we went to the bushes, I wanted to leave, but she wanted to have sex with me, and then we had sex. Ahmadzi claimed that he was out in the early morning because he was hungry, looking for a pizza restaurant. The 21-year-old was unanimously found guilty of the RAPE and was convicted of threatening behaviour on 2 occasions between March the 1st and April the 30th of 2024 in a house in Dufftown. Then it tells you a bit about that, but he was demanding money, demanding a new shower. Now this is a bit that's just pretty sick in my mind. Not as sick as a crime, obviously. But during the evidence to the court, Ahmadzi claimed he was born in 2007. and was currently 18, which would suggest he's trying to claim that he was 17 at the time of the incident. I wonder why. Immigration authorities proved his date of birth was January 04. Now that's no surprise, because they're all January. You ever see a date of birth, it's normally the 1st of January for someone who probably turned up without any papers. The trial judge told Thomas Welsh, KC, told Amadzi, custody is inevitable in your case. Amadzi was placed on the SEX offenders register and remanded in custody while background report and risk assessments are prepared on him ahead of sentencing in November. Now I challenge you, go and find a single detail anywhere about this man's sentence. You won't find it. If you want others to see this video, please click the thumbs up, put your comments below and hit the share button. If you've not already done so, or you think you've already done so, just check that you're still subscribed to the channel. And if you're not, hit the subscribe button below, please. But more important than all that, unless you're the type of person that comes into this country illegally, lies about your age, lies about a young teenager saying that she made you do this, and she was happy, and she instigated this, then not you. But everyone else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.